welcome to Late Night Elections. Today we're going to be going over a very interesting scenario that actually has a small chance of happening this election cycle, and that is if nobody wins the Electoral College. So to win the Electoral College, you need to get to 270 electoral votes out of a possible 538. So it's possible that no candidate reaches that 270 electoral vote threshold and nobody wins because of that. Now, there are systems in place to determine a winner if that happens, but that won't be directly in the hands of the voters. Now, so there are two really possible ways that you can get to the point where no candidate reaches the majority to 70 electoral votes. One would be for there to be a significant third party or independent candidate that runs and wins a state, maybe two states, maybe a handful of states. Whatever the case, they would get some electoral votes, which would take away the possible electoral votes that the two major candidates from the Democrats and Republicans could have, and nobody would end up getting that 270 majority because of that. However, there is another way for this to happen, and in this election, this is going to be the more likely scenario because there is no significant third-party candidate running this time. Joe Jorgensen and Howie Hawkins, who are the Libertarian and the Green Party candidates respectively, haven't been doing very well in the polls, and there's pretty much no chance that either of them are going to get anywhere close to actually winning a state this year. So if we are going to get a tie, it's going to be a 269 to 269 tie. Since 538 is an even number, it is possible for it to be that even 269 to 269, and no candidate will get 270. So the question is, how realistic is this to actually happen? Is there a good chance of this? And so right now I have pulled up an Electoral College map with the states that are pretty much guaranteed or very strongly leaning towards one candidate already filled in for Joe Biden or for Donald Trump. And so now we're going to look at these toss-up states and determine how likely it actually is to result in a 269 to 269 tie. Now, keep in mind, there are actually quite a few different scenarios. Like, there's dozens of scenarios to where you could theoretically end up in a tie between two candidates, but the vast majority of those are extremely unlikely and are never going to happen. You know, things kind of along the lines of like if Wyoming would go for Biden or California going for Trump and things like that that are just never going to happen. But among these toss-up states, we can go ahead and give them out to Joe Biden and Donald Trump and see how we could realistically end up at a perfect Electoral College tie. So among these states, North Carolina is one of the closest in the polls right now, but Trump did win that in 2016, and it's definitely way, way closer than many of the other toss-up states right now. So we're going to go ahead and give that to Trump. Florida is another state that Trump won in 2016. It's another very, very close state in the polls, but for the sake of this 269 to 269 tie scenario, we're going to also give that to Donald Trump. To Joe Biden, we're going to give him New Hampshire because Clinton won that in 2016, and there's really no indication that Trump would win that if he doesn't win some of the other states. You know, if he wins New Hampshire, he's probably also going to win Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania again. Now, if we look at the Rust Belt, which is the most highly contested and important region going into election night, especially when it comes to Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, we can see some different things from the polls. So of these three states, currently Joe Biden is doing the best in Michigan, and it's looking pretty likely that he will win Michigan, at least in comparison to Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. So we're going to go ahead and give Michigan to Biden. Now, among Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, Biden is currently doing better in Wisconsin than Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has been a little shakier in the polls for Joe Biden, but for the sake of this scenario, we're actually going to switch those around, and this could certainly happen in the actual election as well. It's only mid-September right now, so there's still a lot of time for something to happen and for the dynamics in these states to change. So we're going to give Biden Pennsylvania, and we're going to give Wisconsin to Donald Trump, which, as I said, it's still a likely scenario, even though it's not the most likely thing in the polls right now. Arizona is a really interesting state because that went for Trump in 2016, and it's gone for the Republican candidates for quite some time. But this election cycle, Joe Biden has actually been leading in the polls, and it looks like there's a decent chance he will win there. But Arizona has been a historically Republican state, and the polls are still fairly close there, with Trump often only being down a couple or a few percentage points within the margin of error. So there's still a good chance he could win there. So for this scenario, we are going to give Arizona to Trump. And so now you can see we're at a 268 to 268 tie, and the remaining two Electoral College votes are in Nebraska and Maine, who actually do things a little bit differently. Instead of all the other states, which are completely winner take all, Nebraska and Maine actually divide up some of their electoral votes by district. You can see over here, they have Maine's first and second district and Nebraska's first, second, and third district. They each get one individual electoral college vote. And so the demographics and the projected share of the vote that those candidates are going to get is going to be a little bit different than the state as a whole. So while Nebraska is overall a pretty safe red state, the second district of Nebraska is actually more in favor of Joe Biden. And right now, he is slightly favored to win there. And so if he wins that, that takes him to his 269 electoral votes. Maine is sort of the opposite, to where Maine is overall a blue state, but Maine's second district is actually leaning towards Donald Trump. So he has a decent shot of winning there. And just like that, you have a 269 to 269 tie. So is this the most likely scenario? No, it's not. There's some weird things going on here which are fairly unlikely to happen. For example, Trump winning Wisconsin but not winning Pennsylvania, or Biden winning Pennsylvania but not Wisconsin. Probably unlikely. Same with Arizona. I would kind of expect that to go the same way as Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. Nebraska's second district and Maine's second district could also go either way. Those are two fairly close areas. But as you can see, there's nothing really that wild about this scenario. We're not doing anything crazy like giving Biden one of the Dakotas, or giving New York to Trump, or anything that's far outside the realm of possibility. All these things are fairly realistic to happen on their own, and it would just be a matter of everything coming together to give us this 269 to 269 result. If we hop over to 538, they actually have these scenario predictions here, and you can see right here, no one wins the Electoral College. It's at a less than 1 in 100 chance for that to happen. So they don't think it's very likely, but that likely comes down to the fact that it relies on a lot of these things happening on their own that are all not likely, but certainly within the realm of possibility. But when you take into account the probability of, Trump winning Florida, Trump winning North Carolina, Trump winning Arizona, Biden winning Pennsylvania, and so on, the individual probabilities of that kind of add up, and it results in a very low overall chance. But is this impossible? No, it's not. And it's actually a little scary how realistic this perfect tie scenario is. So the question then is, if this does happen, what would actually happen to determine who the president is, since no one reached a majority? And so there actually is a process for this to happen. And 270towin.com has this article where they explain exactly what would happen. So, in the case that there is no majority winner in the Electoral College, the first thing we need to talk about, and they spell out in this paragraph, is that it's possible for there to be faithless electors. So the actual Electoral College votes are cast by actual people who are the electors who go, and theoretically they're supposed to vote for who their state voted for. So, for example, if you are in North Carolina and your state voted for Trump and you're one of the electors, you're expected to go there and cast your vote for Donald Trump. But in a lot of states, there's actually nothing requiring this. And one of those North Carolina electors could say, you know what, I actually want to vote for Joe Biden instead. And they could go and do that. And while there's a lot of legal gray area, and, they might get in trouble with that for the law, they'd certainly get a lot of political backlash if their identity was revealed, but they might be able to do that. We've never actually had a scenario where a faithless elector actually changed any results. We have had faithless electors before, but those were in elections that weren't close and they didn't actually affect the outcome. But in that 269 to 269 tie, that would certainly incentivize a faithless elector if they wanted to change the result of the election. Still, though, that probably wouldn't happen just because that would be a pretty huge deal for this one person to change the result of the election. And there'd probably be some sort of action to prevent that from actually happening. So in that instance, the House would vote on the next president. And you might be thinking, well, the Democrats have the House, so that means Joe Biden would win, but not so fast. First of all, it would be the next House that would actually make this decision. So they would be sworn in based on the results of the November election. And it's possible that the Republicans could have taken the House, but also it's not even the individual representatives that would be making this decision. It would be the state delegations of House members. So you can see right here, this is the projected 2021 House map and what those delegations are going to look like. So you have 22 estimated for the Democrats and 27 for the Republicans. So that means these blue states, the majority of the House members would be Democrats, and the red, the majority would be Republicans. And Michigan, the purple state, would be a perfectly even amount. So based on this, they would actually vote for Donald Trump being president, and so he would win. As for the vice president, the pick that the presidential candidates had on their ticket wouldn't just automatically get to come along with them. The Senate would actually vote on them. So you could have a scenario, which would be really weird, where the Republicans have the control of House state delegations. They vote for Donald Trump, but the Democrats actually take the Senate and they vote in, say, Joe Biden or Kamala Harris as the vice president. And so you get a President Trump and a Vice President Biden or a Vice President Harris, which would be interesting to say the least. And in the really crazy event that it's a perfect tie at 25 to 25 state delegations, they would just have to keep going at it until they finally break that tie and get a winner. In this hyper-partisan environment, it's hard to know what that would look like, if they would be able to come up with like a centrist compromise candidate, or if they would just keep fighting and fighting until that happened. But in that event, the vice president that the Senate picks would be the acting president until the House can figure it out. So that would be what happens in the event of a 269 to 269 Electoral College tie. And that is how likely it is to actually happen. It's probably not going to happen, but it's really not that far outside the realm of possibility. And we can certainly come up with realistic Electoral College maps to where that could happen. So thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned what could happen in the event of an Electoral College tie. If you enjoyed, be sure to give the video a like and subscribe to the channel for more election analysis and predictions in the future. Thanks for watching.